Tuesday, August the 4th. Welcome to another edition of The Sheet. Glad to have you aboard today, whether you are listening on your favorite podcast platform, whether you are watching us on our DFO YouTube channel, whether you're in the chat, whether you're taking us on a run on the treadmill, on the road, whether we're at the gym with you, whether you're just chilling out with us, we appreciate your attention today. So thanks for joining us here on the program. Keith Kavanaugh is going to be stopping by from the PuckPedia Hockey Show. We're going to talk about everything that's gone on so far this summer. We're going to try to cram it all in as we're kind of doing this summer midway point, August the 4th, figuring, all right, this is kind of the midway. There's a little pause right now. Teams are regrouping. General managers are having a look at, what's next for August and maybe trying to squeeze in some vacation as well. Which, by the way, it used to be like 2 months. Like for managers, and they were like checked out, like July 2nd, peaced out, gone fishing. Now it's like you get a week, maybe 2 if you're lucky. We're going to be talking about, what's happened so far with Keith coming up in a couple of seconds and speculate on what could be next. But before we get to all of it, I want to draw your attention to 2 things. First of all, in The Athletic, our good friend Aaron Portzline, who covers the Columbus Blue Jackets, just wrote an outstanding piece that I would encourage all of you to read. It's one of those pieces that selfishly, if you're not a subscriber to The Athletic, you hope that they make available for free. And I know it's a little bit navel-gazing because I'm in the media business, the broadcast business, but the title of the piece is NHL Hockey on the Radio a Dying Art? Veteran Broadcasters Worry About Its Future. I would direct you to all this. We talked about it last time, what happened with the Columbus Blue Jackets. And now Jeff Svoboda is doing his last week. So you wonder about the future of editorial on the Columbus Blue Jackets website as well. A great piece. I encourage you all to have a peek at it. Aaron's a brilliant writer and been on the Columbus beat from day one. The other thing, I just want to put it out there because I want to make sure that things like this are part of the discussion. You heard me last week go on about, even if it doesn't make sense financially to do some things as an organization, you should still have a pride of ownership over what you do, and the products that you put out should be the best that you can possibly be. And you don't ever want to send a message to the marketplace that you really don't care about something that you're putting out to the marketplace just to have it on. And I know that radio, I'm not removing radio itself from this situation. Radio has done plenty to shoot itself in the foot over and over and over and over again. But nonetheless, someone that I've gotten to know a little bit and I have a tremendous amount of respect for already. We've only had a couple of interactions. Kat Whetstone put out a tweet this morning. That's I think a really important point to have as part of this discussion. And she submits, I've been thinking a ton about blind fans and how this affects them. Because of the detail radio goes into, losing that could derail a blind fan's experience of the game. I know it sounds small, but radio and accessibility still matter. There's a great blind hockey association in Toronto. I know they're all a blind hockey league. I know there's a lot of other blind hockey leagues that are around. I just wanted to make sure that became just part of the discussion point, or something that you have at least in the back of your mind, because I don't think that Columbus are the last ones to go down the simulcast route. And the other thing that I'll point out too is most, if not all, of the broadcasters that you hear calling games for your favorite NHL team got their start in radio. I'll focus on, Buffalo Sabres, for example, like Dan Dunleavy, who I think has one of the best calls, in all of the NHL. He started where I did, Fan 590, back in the 90s. I started in 95. He was probably there before me. I know he was there before me because I would go to the studio and there was Dan. I'm like, oh man, Dunleavy's so good. Buffalo's always been blessed with great broadcasters, Hodge, Darling, Weber, Jenneret, of course, and now Dunleavy. Let's not lose sight of the fact that all these people got their starts in radio. They all did. Anywho, bracket that conversation for another day. I'm sure we will pick it up because, as I mentioned, I don't think it's the last time we're going to see an organization here go the simulcast route. In the meantime, here we are, beginning of August, and it's probably a good time to take a pause, as it seems like the NHL and 32 teams have all sort of taken a pause right now after a flurry of activity in early July. That was great. That every day was catnip. That was fantastic. And bring aboard Keith Kavanaugh from the PuckPedia Hockey Show. I mean, wanted to have Keith on for a while now, and I figured, Keith, right now is probably the perfect time because, and I know I'm going to jinx this here, there's probably an hour right now where we're pretty sure that nothing's going to happen. I know the OHL trade deadline or trade window just opened up, so there's some moves in junior hockey, but right now in the NHL, I think we're pretty safe saying right now nothing major is going to happen over the next hour. So let's have a sort of little rewind and a speculation of what we're looking at now in the National Hockey League. And the latest bit of news is the Islanders. And we had mentioned this on the program a few weeks ago after he stepped away from the Boston Bruins, contract expiring August 1st. This is, of course, Evan Gold, who gets hired as an assistant general manager and the general manager of AHL Hamilton for the New York Islanders. When he stepped away from the Boston Bruins, he was going somewhere, and after a couple of weeks, it became obvious to many of us that he was headed to the Islanders. So just so I can have it out there, the geek moment of the podcast, I thought of Stan Butler, longtime OHL coach, 800 wins, one of the best to ever do it. So he used to have a hockey school at North Toronto Arena, and casual hockey fans will recognize that name because that's the place where Tom Wilson played. And it's, North Toronto Arena, home of Stanley Cup champion Tom Wilson. That's on the voicemail when you call. So he used to have, check this one out. So he used to have this hockey camp at North Toronto Arena. And I believe all four of these people were at one camp all at the same time. There was Evan Gold, who was going to York Mills Collegiate, Judd Moldaver, who was going to UCC, Chris Burkett, who's chief legal counsel for the PWHL, and David Beeston, who's a former head of Fenway Sports. Now, either Stan's a really bad instructor because none of these people made it to the NHL, or he just helped raise a fine stock of people that populate various front offices and agent offices around the National Hockey League, the PWHL, and other sports entities. But anyhow, long-winded introduction to ask this question. What did you think of the hire? Man,
yeah, well, long. Jeff, it's great to see you. Great to come on your show finally.
Yes.
Need to do my rookie lap here, which is fantastic. And also to your point too.
Hang on, shave the beard. Hang on, you're the rookie. Shave the beard. Let's go. Get the Bic out right now. Shave it live on the air. There's your rookie lap.
Could you imagine? It would be like Michael Rupp did that when the Daily Faceoff event was in the city with Johnny Lazarus and Colby Cohen.
Yes.
Rupper's getting his beard shaved live while their show's going on.
It's good.
But to your point too about the radio situation, I read that article this morning. The Athletic. I mean, I think they're great in terms of their hockey coverage. So if you don't subscribe, this is another endorsement of the Athletic. To your point, it is hard to. How do you dictate if you're on TV? The way you're describing the game is going to be completely different than if you're on radio, because like you mentioned, you need to tell the score over and over again. You need to let people know what's going on the ice if they can't see it. So I'm on board with you. I don't think simulcast is the answer. I know there's costs associated with everything, so I get from a financial perspective why that might be. But let's talk about Evan Gold here.
Sure.
Yeah, to your point, great hire for the New York Islanders. I talked to our friend Stefan Rosner before just to get some more insight from him. So obviously Evan Gold's been in the Bruins organization for almost a decade, if not longer. He's coined this analytics guru, but what he's really strong at in industry circles is a balance of the eye test with the numbers, which I think is kind of the future of how you succeed in a front office. So he'll be the GM of Hamilton. Obviously, he's going to be the assistant GM with Darsh 2 in New York, and he's going to be involved kind of with everything, including the cap. And they also have a couple guys nearing their ends of deals in Steve Pellegrini and Chris Lamorello, who have been there a while. And I love Chris Lamorello. Big fan. Knew Lou Lamorello since I was 5 years old. So just great family, great people. But to the way the Darsh is building this front office now, he's getting a lot of guys in their 40s, right? So he has Ryan Bowness, he has himself. Matthew Darsh is only 49. Evan Gold, I believe, is 46, and then McKee also is in his 40s. So it sounds like it's sort of like a changing of the guard and just trying to kind of become a little more, data centric. And I think that's kind of the approach that some of these teams are taking now.
It's interesting too, and we'll look historically at this as well. When you look at just the demarcation point, I think for this generation is 2005. maybe even a little bit longer, but I just used 2005. That's when the game changed, new rules package, new logo for the NHL, lockout, salary cap, like all of it, right? Discuss what worked, discuss what didn't work, discuss what they should change, discuss what were the home runs. But it seems as if more so than ever, one of the smartest things you can do is populate your front office with people who could take your job. Where once upon a time, the philosophy was, never hire someone that could take your job. That, I'm going to go through sort of evolution of general managers here. That very much was the saying when the art of the general manager was wide open and general managers made all of the decisions, right? Now, because of, how many times the CBA has changed, the art of the manager has been greatly diminished from the Bill Torrey and Sam Pollock era. But that turned into, if you're going to hire one, hire two assistant general managers. And the thinking behind it was never have someone challenge vertically, always have them challenge horizontally, right? Like let them fight horizontally. So hire two assistant general managers. Therefore, all of their energy can be focused on getting over on the guy horizontally as opposed to challenging the guy vertically. And now in this era of collaboration, it's like, no, fill your front office with like 3 or 4 people that could take your job. Like look at the Detroit Red Wings with Ken Holland and Yzerman and Nil and Verbeek and et cetera, et cetera. Dallas the same way with Scott White and Beverly down all in all. Like the manager space right now seems to be volume, and it continues to fragment as well. This is the cap guy. This is the analytics guy. Once upon a time, the GM did the whole thing. And now you just can't. Now you just can't.
Well, also, Jeff, it's like when your team is like cap strapped, or you look at the Islanders, for example, right? Like they're in an interesting spot because they have an aging core in the Bo Horvats and the Matt Barzals, but then you strike gold with Matthew Schaefer, and you have to take a step back and be like, how do we build this for the future? Are we going to be a team that's going for it as they did at the trade deadline last year, or are we going to be a team that drafts really well, collects a lot of assets, and then when Matthew Schaefer in a couple years gets that new extension, maybe that's when we kind of go all in on that window. So the Islanders, instead of doing a lot of roster manipulation this offseason, they did some front office manipulation and really managed to get a lot of people in their front office that they make decisions, be creative. And sometimes when you're kind of cap strapped and there's not too much you can do on the roster, you do it with the front office.
The thing in Darsh's defense here too, like he, and you sort of already winked at this, is Darsh inherited a lot of people. Like normally a manager comes in, it's like, all right, I'm bringing in all my own crew, but like there were a lot of people that are already there, married to long-term contracts. I would imagine it would make Darsh feel like, okay, I'm a little bit hamstrung here right now, but slowly but surely I'm going to chip away. And that's why I looked at the Evan Gold hire and said, like, because we're all looking for breadcrumbs. Okay, what does this tell us? What does this tell us? And to your point, I think he's going to try to put together a progressive front office. I really do. Not unlike where he came with the Tampa Bay Lightning.
Yeah, he saw what worked in Tampa under Julian Breezeball and even Steve Yzerman to an extent, and then he kind of gets molded in that front office structure. And then when he gets his opportunity in New York, he brings in guys like Ryan Bonus, like an Evan Gold, who were interviewing for general manager positions. Evan Gold was a finalist in Vancouver, and they couldn't work out the final details, and then that obviously led to his departure in Boston. But he's bringing in guys who are right on the cusp of a full-time GM job, and those are the guys who, like you mentioned in the past, you might be hesitant to bring on because you think they're going to potentially be a successor for your job. But at this point, you need to kind of bring on all the brains that you can so that you can build a successful, sustainable contender, because that's what gets you to keep your job in the long run. Because if the Islanders miss the playoffs again this year with Matthew Schaefer, like, you're probably not thinking Darsh is on a short leash, but there's always the potential that sometimes these ownerships want quick results, and if you aren't able to produce them, they might make a change.
Tell me when to stop. 16, 17, 18. I'm talking about Matthew Schaefer. 19.
Let's do 19. So there
like
was
I'm on the Price is Right.
Yeah. Where it was who's going to take over to be the highest paid player after Macklin Celebrini's extension. And I actually don't think it's going to be Schaefer. He seems like a kind of guy who will take a reasonable value contract that won't necessarily break the bank and take the blank check and the 20% allowed in the CBA. He might take a little bit of a discount to let the Islanders build around him and use that salary elsewhere. So to me, I mean, yeah, Schaefer is going to be extension eligible on July 1 of next year. And you'd imagine that the Islanders do what the Sharks did this offseason with Macklin Celebrini and eventually come to terms on a deal. It'll be interesting, Jeff, to see what that term is, just given how this offseason is kind of shaped out. And these young players, instead of taking that usual max of 8 years, which will be 7 years starting on September 15th, they're taking that 5-year deal that only buys one UFA year and really kind of allows them to re-dip in the pool of the contracts at age 26, which is still their prime years.
You know, a part of me, I'm gonna get on my sort of high horse here for a couple of seconds. Part of me really hates it when I hear, oh, he's gonna leave something. He's gonna leave some money on the table. So the general manager has, we saw this with countless players, Connor McDavid famously a couple of times now. Part of that really bugs me, and here's why. I'll go back to 04-05. We went through a year-long drought of NHL hockey. There's still American League hockey. There was still junior hockey. It's like hockey was still being played, but the NHL was dark for a season. And out of all of it, the NHL wanted a salary cap. They got a salary cap. And it seemed as if, like, Keith, like almost right away, teams went into sell mode. And what they sold the players on is, this is a partnership, and you're a general manager too. Like, I hate it when I hear, like, when players take on the responsibility of managing the salary cap. It is not Matthew Schaefer's job to manage the cap for Matthew Darche. It is Matthew Schaefer's job to perform as best he can on the ice and get compensated, I hate the word fairly, but here I go using it, fairly, based on where he is now and where he is headed. But somewhere along the way, and I will fault the players and I will fault the agents for it, the players and agents bought it. Like they're somehow responsible for the cap too. No, you're not. No, you went through a lockout and had a salary cap shoved down your throat. You lost your executive director and Bob Goodnow, and now you're managing the cap? No. That bugs me. Like that's for, like, honestly, like that's for you and Hart to do at PuckPedia. Yep. You guys manage the cap, okay? That's not for Schaefer and Celebrini and Leo Carlson, all the McDavid, and leaving money for. It's not their job to like. Does that resonate with you at all? Because it the more I see it, the more it really bugs me. Oh, I have to leave something for someone else. No, you don't. Yeah, no, this is what the owners wanted. So now deal with it. You can't put together a successful team. Too bad. You wanted a salary cap. This is the way it is. Don't blame the players.
Jeff, you make a ton of good points. So, like, I hate to push back too much. It's just, I think the players view it as they know that whatever chunk that they're going to get is going to be less for the rest of their team to build around. But to your point, too, like, that's not their job, right? It's not their fault that they're at the top of their market. And Matthew Schaefer's comments was basically like, my agent, who's Patrick Morris, is going to figure out the numbers for him. So they're going to come some offers. And, it could have been a Celebrini situation, too, where he also didn't take the max of what he could have. And if he waited another year, he would have been able to get even more because he signed the extension a year early when the salary cap's going to be going up another $9 million. That adds to the percentage that he can take on his next deal. So he did inherently leave some money on the table as well, but maybe he's happy with that number, and maybe he views that as a number that he's comfortable with. It's generational money, right? It's over, almost $100 million. So, but yeah, it's not the players' jobs to leave money on the table, because then you don't know what the next moves are going to be. In Edmonton, for example, after you saw what they spent that salary cap on, do you think Connor McDavid was really thrilled about leaving money on the table for what had transpired after? You never know what's going to happen.
Part of me go, if I'm McDavid at that point, I'll come in for 12.5. You run every trade and every signing by me.
Mm-hmm. I think that has to be the agreement, right? Because he left so much money on the table. He didn't just leave $1 million, couple $1 million. It's similar to Jalen Brunson and the Knicks, where he left, $100 million over 4 years to let them build a championship team, and they ended up winning the championship this year. But if you're doing that and that's your responsibility, then you also should have more say in what these moves are going to be. Because if you're the best at your craft, you know which players you're going to bring in that you're going to succeed with, you would think.
So let me shift to agents here quickly, because you mentioned Pat Morris of Newport a couple of times. I want to swing to Darren Ferris, someone who you know very well from Cortex. That was a great podcast, and really got some good traction too, especially in Toronto for some reason. I'll scratch my head about that one. I had someone tell me years ago. This person said to me, "If my kid played in the NHL, I'd want Darren Ferris to represent him, because I know that he'll get my son every last dime. That's it. He'll get every quarter under every cushion, take back every empty, and he'll put it in my son's pocket." That's how this person said. That's how I feel about Darren Ferris. Were you surprised at the reaction? I mean, we probably shouldn't, because it's Toronto and it's Mitch Marner, right? It's like that. It's like a classic talk radio. In case of emergency, break glass. Oh, go to the Marner topic, break glass. Let's go, and you know you're going to get popped in Toronto for it. But were even you surprised after that interview when you published at just how lit on fire that whole interview became?
I mean, Jeff, yes, to answer your short and sweet, yes, I was surprised. When recording that, and I know Steve Dangle's podcast did a whole reaction to it, and the whole sentiment was that he went 7.5 minutes uninterrupted, just kind of going and going and going. But we were super thrilled that Darren Ferris came on. He kind of gave his opinion. And, Marner was just one little topic that I wanted to discuss among a plethora of different things. Like, I think the most pressing this offseason was the Bowen Byram, not just the acquisition by the Blackhawks, but then the subsequent extension. I mean, I was getting text messages from, Sportsnet 590, all these Toronto media wanting me to come on and explain the situation and how that interview played out, which I was happy to do. But yeah, to your point, I think Toronto just loves to talk about these situations. And granted, they're a lot closer to all the details of what happened than I am. I'm not a Toronto Maple Leafs fanboy. So a lot of those media people and the players and, former players are on shows now talking about it. And I think that they're just kind of fed up and just sick of talking about something that happened over a year ago. But like when we give agents an opportunity and a platform to talk about whatever they want to talk about, we had Elaine Waugh on a couple weeks prior, and he was kind of breaking down how that Nico Hischier extension was going to look, which he ended up signing a few days after we recorded the episode with him. We had John Kofi, who represents James Hagens, and we talked about his amateur tryout, which he signed before he got his ELC signed with the Boston Bruins, which was a big talking point this year. So we love when agents come on and give their peace of mind, but to us, we expected to get a little traction on that just given the nature of the conversation, but I didn't expect, over 1.3 million views on PuckPedia's Twitter with the clip, and then me getting text messages from people I don't ever get text messages from, people wanting to talk about it more. It took a life of its own, but I think Ferris got his point across, and to your point, he will maximize what value he can get for his clients. If you look at that Bo Byram deal, he got an incredible deal for his client on that contract.
That's the thing. The thing, and the reputation is well told. Like, Darren Ferris tries to walk guys to free agency. Like, he's not afraid. He encourages his clients, like, get right out there and see what's over on the other side of the hill. As for the Marner topic, like, the Marner topic in Toronto is this generation's version of the Kerry Fraser, Wayne Gretzky high stick in the LA-Toronto series in 1993, which for how long did Toronto media dine out on that? And now it's the ever-long audit on Mitch Marner and Toronto. I find a lot of it really insincere, because Maple Leafs fans die for this topic to get renewed, and then when it does, they come out and blast whoever's talking about it for not being able to let it go. Like, that's the thing that I kept wondering about. It's like I watched the piece with Darren, and I'm like, all the Keith did was ask him a question. It's not like he just jumped in and said, "Before we start this, I've prepared a statement about Mitch Martin." Like, no, like, you asked a question, he gave what I thought was a really thorough answer. People may not like it, but from his point of view and from his clients and his clients' family's point of view, those are the answers. People are dying for it, but then they turn on the outrage machine pretty fast.
Well, Jeff, too, your old pal Elliot Friedman, right? He always says, we get mad when players give these, people in hockey media, right? They give these template boring answers. But then we also get mad when they tell the truth and they really expand on it and they give their personality a little bit. And these people, like, you can't get both sides. You either get one or the other. And to me, I'd much rather a situation like Darren Ferris where he gives his side of it and he's really thorough in his answer and it allows the conversation to happen.
Do you have a dream agent, by the way?
In terms of what?
Like, because you have a lot of agents, and I love talking to agents, love hearing agents talk too. Is there like anyone in the landscape, either current agent, past agent? Like, there are so many. Like, I miss Don Batesley, like, who was the late, and he was such a wonderful person to talk to. I broke in doing hockey media with Bill Waters, who was a former agent with Alan Eagleson in the 70s before later on becoming assistant general manager with the Toronto Maple Leafs. So like, I've sort of grown up in hockey media around agents. We all have. Is there one, like, do you have like an agent wish list? Like, oh, I'd love to be able to talk to Don Meehan, the Godfather. I'd love to be able to talk to like whomever. Is there one for, maybe Mike Gillis? There's a great one. Agents still call him for advice. Agents still call him for advice to this day.
Even Quinn Hughes, who's in the the GM 100%. Of the Montreal Canadiens right now, like he obviously came from a nice background, and then his agency got acquired, and then he went to Montreal, and then the fallout was, I think some of those players ended up coming to Cortex with Darren Ferris. So there's two agents right now, I would say, and the first one's going to be Judd, just because he's so engaging in his conversation. He represents some of the top players in the NHL, and he's a guy who I believe is maybe going to position himself long-term for an executive role on an NHL team, a la what Kent Hughes did.
He can't take the pay cut, Keith. He can't take the pay cut. Same as Pat Brisson can't take the pay cut.
I know. Pat's another guy, too, who I think would be interesting. I think the thing with Pat is he's a lot more guarded in the information he's willing to share on a public podcast like our PuckPedia hockey show. So I think like the interview on the record would not be as interesting as maybe the interview off the record.
That's always true. That's always true. That's always true, especially when it comes to agents. But I find I've had Pat on a couple of different times on this program and previous shows that I've done. You kind of go into it knowing that, okay, there's only going to be so far he's going to go with certain clients and certain topics. But like, look, I was on with Greg and Pat was on, and we asked him about the idea because the Hughes brothers are represented by CAA. And we asked, like, is there any chance of the Hughes boys, in Michigan in the offseason talking about getting together? And he kind of did this one with a little sort of Voltairean smile and a wink and said, hockey players talk all the time.
Speaking of Quinn,
if you put in your on your Pat Brisson decoder ring, what you're saying is, yeah, of course they're talking about it.
Exactly. And even like now we're talking about Quinn, right? And his extension that was going to for sure be signed, a couple weeks into this off season. And now we've gotten to August, and Bill Guerin was on with Russo today where he was basically talking about, these are big decisions, and we've been in touch with their camp. And, the sentiment I'd say a month ago was not if he's going to sign this extension, but when he's going to sign this extension with Minnesota. And now it almost feels like it's shifted a little bit to if.
I agree.
You still put Minnesota in the driver's seat, right? You still, for all intents and purposes, think that it's going to get done. But the longer this drags on, if we get to training camp and there's no deal in place, the conversation's only going to get louder and louder and louder. And the Devils, I think, are kind of keeping that cap space open a little bit to be able to make that move. Quinn's only due $7.85 million AAV against the cap this year. So obviously the big number will come in the extension that starts next season, but they have the space to fit him in this year with a couple moves. So I think that's on the back of their mind.
I think in the back of Quinn Hughes' mind here too is I don't think any of this is about the money. Because I think the money he's going to get in Minnesota is the money he's going to get in New Jersey, is the money he's going to get in Detroit, is the money he's going to get wherever he ends up going.
Yep.
I think he looks at it and says, like, is this a Stanley Cup team?
Yep.
Honestly, I really do believe. Look at the center. Just look at right down the middle.
And Joel Eriksson-Ek is a great center. I think he's a really, really solid center. But aside from him, like your center depth is pretty weak. And I think if you look at the Devils' center depth, on the contrary, they have two of the top centers in the league. You could probably rank them. I think the Athletic ranked them the second or third best center duo in the NHL with Nico Hischier and Jack Hughes. You're also at a position, Jeff, where you're in the prime of your career. When do you have an opportunity to play with both of your brothers in the NHL in the prime of your career where you could potentially win a Stanley Cup for the next 3 or 4 seasons? The Devils adding a player like Quinn Hughes, whatever they have to give up, they will be well positioned to compete for a Stanley Cup year in and year out with both Jack and Quinn Hughes. And the other moves that Sonny Maeda has made on that roster, I believe, has positioned themselves really nicely for the future. So I think to your point, I think it is about roster construction, because even though the Wild have two of the best wingers in the NHL, and Kirill Kaprizov and Matt Boldy might have the best contract in the NHL right now, you got to ask yourself the question of, like, what is this team? Are we going to be able to compete with Colorado and Dallas year in and year out? That division's a gauntlet, and granted, New Jersey has Carolina in the way, and Washington has beefed up as well, but I think it might be a little bit of an easier path for them than for Minnesota.
It does look like it's the battle for third right now. Like, I know we're doing this all on paper, but the Stanley Cup exists in the Metropolitan Division. Interesting, hey, like all last season, all we talked about was how strong the Atlantic is and how strong the Central is, and
how weak Pittsburgh was.
How weak Pittsburgh was. And just stay alive. You'll see weird things. But when it comes to the New Jersey Devils, like, we're already handing first place in the Metro to Carolina. We're giving it to the Washington Capitals based on the moves that Chris Patrick made. Spencer Carberry has a lot of options, and like, if you really squint at it, you say, how is Justin Sourdif a fourth line center? But nonetheless, like, they are stacked. So it looks like it's the battle for third right now. But I look at the New Jersey Devils and say to myself, health is the ultimate wild card. I really like Jake Allen, but it's probably going to be like a 50-50 split there with the net miners.
33, Jeff.
You think they're going to do it? You think they're going to do it and split it that way? I know you just had Sonny on.
Yeah, I would say generally, like, probably not, but because of the way Sonny thinks and more of this, like, Moneyball kind of approach, I think for them, it probably makes the most sense. You only have about a $4 million investment in net between three guys. Why not just rotate the three of them, play the hot hand? All three guys are, could be exposed to waivers, so you don't want to lose a Nico Dawes, who's a young asset, free to waivers. So I think for them, it makes the most sense to go this Moneyball approach, goalie by goalie by goalie. And then to your point, too, like, on paper, the Capitals do look like the second best team, but we also said on paper the Penguins look like the worst team in the Metropolitan by a good bit last season, and they ended up surging and making the playoffs. And, 2 or 3 years ago when Nashville had that big year when they signed Stamkos and Marchessault and Brady Shea, we're basically penciling them into a playoff spot, and it kind of never gelled and worked out together. So that's why I love how you can put as much as you want on paper, but that's why we play 82, now 84 games in the NHL regular season.
Let me ask you one more thing about the Devils too, because I'm with you. Like, and I think that listen, I've known Sonny Maeda for a while, and he's a huge jazz fan, and we all know of his poker background and all that. Like, he just, like, at the end of the day, he just thinks differently, right? Like, he doesn't draw inspiration from the same places that everybody else in the game has. Like, he is a different type of thinker. He doesn't care what you think. He's respectful, but I don't think he really puts too much stock in the traditional way of thinking. Case in point, right away, boom, Barrett Hayton offer sheet, and a really smart one too.
Yep.
I look at the Devils and I say to myself, again, if everybody stays healthy, and if they can keep Jack Hughes out of restaurants and let people cut his dinner for him and keep him away from sharp objects, then I don't know, like, is it beyond the pale that it's the Devils in second place? Dare I say the Devils in first place here? I really like New Jersey. I really, really like, and again, if somehow they can get Quinn Hughes here, if it doesn't come together for Minnesota, and they're forced to sort of move him along and recoup some of their assets they traded to Vancouver, then all of a sudden, maybe the Cup stays in the division.
Yeah, I think to your point, like, health is obviously the biggest factor, but I don't think it's crazy to say the Devils get first or second in that division ahead of a Carolina, ahead of a Washington. Carolina's going to be without Seth Jarvis for the first couple months of the season. Injuries always happen. With Washington, you don't know how these wingers are going to gel with each other. You're going to have a lot of guys competing for minutes that they normally would get on their previous teams that they're not going to get now. So an Alex Tuck, a Jordan Kyrou, Ryan Leonard might get relegated. He might not even be on the second power play unit. Justin Sourdif, who's a guy who, when we talked on Dimitri's Filipovich's PDO cast, he's a great extension eligible candidate, a guy who doesn't, he has a lot of value. They traded a second round pick for him, which seemed crazy at the time, but then he's developed into a really nice player. So to me, though, the Devils, they have really good center depth, which I think is very important. A lot of the guys that Sonny Mehta has acquired too have a lot of this wing center flexibility. So you look at a guy like an Evan Rodriguez, like a Cody Glass, like a Jesper Boquist. They can play the wing, they can play center. He's making bets on these guys. If you look at the 4th round pick, they traded for Amadeus Lombardi from Grand Rapids, the Detroit Red Wings organization. He's almost a point per game player in the AHL. He's only 22 years old. He's a guy who they're making a bet on that they think could potentially, rise above expectations, and that's the perfect kind of bet because he doesn't cost much in terms of salary, and a 4th round draft pick is very random if that player is going to hit or not. So I think a lot of what he's done this offseason is reshape the team. He didn't sign Simone Nemec to a long-term contract, so he kept that cap flexibility, which I think is important as you look that he signed a 5x $7.2 million AAV deal. So a lot of these moves is just about being flexible, giving positional flexibility, and then giving Sheldon Keefe as much matchup opportunity as he wants. And they added a coaching analytics position in their front office too, which is very rare in the NHL. So I think a lot of looking at these matchups and how to deploy the roster is going to be a big emphasis this season, and looking at the chemistry and which players kind of gel with certain players who has better underlying numbers as a line. So I think a lot of that is going to come into play, and I think the Devils could succeed because of that.
It's safe bets, right? Like we look at a team, look at even like the Colorado Avalanche, who've been doing it for years. Look at Parker Kelly, for example, like really smart, safe bets. And
Jack Drury, who's now on Nashville, obviously.
Who's now on Nashville, and surprise, surprise, who's a GM in Nashville. But it shouldn't really be a secret. And you look at the Carolina Hurricanes last year win the Stanley Cup, and, we had Tulsky on the program afterwards, and he talked about, some of the bets that they've made and players that they've shuffled in and out. And he goes like, look, I know I'm on I'm paraphrasing here, but he goes, I know I have a hot hand right now. Right now we've shuffled out a dozen players and I'm 12 for 12. Right. I'm not going to stay at 100%. No one thinks, but at the same time, if everything is all just about percentages, you make enough smart, safe bets over the years, these things accumulate, and then all of a sudden, the New Jersey Devils become one of the deepest teams in the NHL.
It's not just the players, too. It's the contracts that Carolina has signed those guys, too, like the Jackson Blakes of the world, like the Logan Stankovens. Like, they're taking these guys when they're not at their peak value, and they're signing them to long-term deals, low AAV, and it really allows them to have a ton of cap flexibility. But then in addition to that, they're making really good draft picks. So they have guys like a Bradley Nadeau, like a Felix Unger, who are now really interesting trade pieces if they want to move those guys. So they have a lot of assets, and I think more organizations have to think of their prospects as assets as opposed to guys that are potentially going to develop into your system.
One of the low-key most interesting stories to me, now it's not a low-key story for Ottawa Senators fans, it's a big one, but one of the low-key contract stories for me going on right now is Drake Batherson.
Yep, I talked about that on the show too. What a player.
I love him as a player. There's a few things happening here. It seems as if, Tuck wanted the Kempe deal. Batherson now wants the Tuck deal, which is the Kempe deal. And that deal next year, as the salary cap goes up, probably goes up by $1 million. So the 10.5 is 11.5. I don't know if Steve Stais had that number in mind. It might have been a single digit, but here we are with Drake Batherson. And the other thing, especially right now, is everything Ottawa does is sort of under the shadow or under the umbrella of Brady Tkachuk went to Florida.
Yep.
And you can't lose another player.
You can't lose another player who wants to stay there too. I think that's also important.
100%. And I think his representatives of Cortex know that.
Yeah. And he's coming off a really good deal, right? Under $5 million AAV. If you look at him last season, he had 71 points in 79 games played. He's a power play specialist, which I know we talk about a lot about, he doesn't have as good 5v5 numbers, but I also think it's valuable to be converting on the power play, right? So he had 7.
Can I pause on that for 1 second? I had one, and this is an analytics-based manager who mentioned, I brought this up with one player, and then there was a long silence. And the manager said to me, correct me if I'm wrong here, do power play goals count?
Seriously, there's such a connotation.
Oh yeah, maybe I'll just shut up.
There's such a connotation that they have to be really good at 5v5. But like, if you're converting on the power plays, and he had 7.23 points per 60 last year on the power play, led the Ottawa Senators, top 10 mark in the NHL. He's going to be at 29 years old when the new deal starts. So you worry about that. But if he wants to stay there, and he's a player who's almost a point per game player, and you lost your best winger, you need a guy. If you're in a compete now window, they have 2 great contracts with Jake Sanderson and with Tim Stützle. You're not going to just throw that away.
But pause. The Jake Sanderson deal might be the best deal I want that as part of the conversation too.
All right.
That might be the best. That might I mean, I got a defensive. Listen, I have a default. Like my bias is always to the blue line. That Sanderson contract is so good.
I agree.
That's one of the best deals in the NHL.
That's the point, though, Jeff, right? It's like, if they have these really good contracts and these really good players, you're not going to bottom out. You're not going to tank. You need to try and build for the future. And they did that. They signaled that by their trade with William Eklund for 9th overall, right? They got a winger who's cost controlled for the next 3 seasons and then his RFA eligibility after that. But you pair that with Drake Batherson and then Tim Stützle on that top line. That's a really good top line, and that's it's a tough Atlantic division, but Ottawa's in a good position. Linus Ullmark could have a bounce back this year. I know his regular season numbers weren't great last year, but there was a lot going on, outside noise, and so he bounces back, and they have a good team. Artem Zub was unreal with Jake Sanderson last year too.
It really was. To the point about Linus Ullmark too, I hope for Ottawa's sake, and I hope for Ullmark's sake, that's the real Linus Ullmark, who, when you look, I've always made this point. It's interesting, Keith, like, I talk to goalies or people that are in that industry, and they'll always tell me the same thing. Like, as far as like skill goes for a goaltender, he's got like top 10 skill. Like other goaltenders look at him and go like, oh, I wish I could do that like Ullmark, like this like Ullmark. The only thing that he's never able to do outside of a brief time when he was in the Sabres organization playing with Rochester is just, as I would say, like bite down on the mouth guard and say like, I'm not letting the next one in, boys. And we saw that in that series against Carolina. And I can't tell you how many of those Carolina players and people in the organization have told me toughest series they had was against Ottawa. And a lot of it was because of Linus Ullmark. Even though it was a sweep. Toughest series was against the Ottawa Senators. It wasn't the Vegas Golden Knights. It was the Ottawa Senators, and that one was a sweep. I hope for his sake and for Sen's sake that's the real Linus Ullmark. The one that marries that elite level skill with that element of nothing's going past me, guys. Get on my back. We're winning this game.
Can we shift, Jeff? So we want to talk about the extension eligible guys, right? Like Drake Batherson. I think that's a good time to extend him, is right now, like you mentioned, before the cap goes up, before he breaks out again next season, playing a lot of his time with Tim Stützle. To me, there's another guy, and we talked about Quinn Hughes earlier. So there was a cap space to when you're in years 5, 6, 7, and 8, when you are contending and you're supposed to be this good team, maybe playoff building towards your contention window. You want that deal to be on a good AAV. And so if you only sign him to 3, 4, 5 seasons, when you're finally going to be good, he's either going to be able to leave in free agency, or you're going to have to pay a lot of money for what he's worth relative to what he's making now. And so he hasn't popped offensively. You can get value on that now.
So here's the, and again, like, this is an old school way of thinking, but I think everybody has a number in their mind. And the number that I'm looking for is games played. Now, when it comes to goaltenders, honestly, Keith, I really try not to have a solid opinion on them until I see 100 games. Okay. And then I start to get, because you want the shooters all to have a look once and then make their adjustments. NHL games. Yes, sorry, NHL games. So I want 100 games from my goaltenders. This was like the old Matt Murray argument. I want 100 games until I make my mind up about a goaltender, because I want the shooters to see, I want to see both the shooters and the goaltender make adjustments, and then everything is just going to settle into where it is. Because we've seen goalies come out of the house on fire and they're incredible, and then they fizzle. 90s were full of these goaltenders, I assure you. And I don't know about you, but for defensemen, I've always said the number is 200. And Zeev Williams played 76 games. Yep. So the thing that I keep saying, it's a horrible talk radio / podcast answer, and I fully admit it. But my opinion on Zeev Boyum is, I don't know. I honestly, I don't. Like, I do not envy Ryan Johnson here and the Sedins whatsoever, because I really don't know. I think that Zeev Boyum's going to be a really good defenseman. I really do. I think when you look at everything that he's done leading up to this right now, and I know he's playing on a very challenging Vancouver Canucks team for 45 games, and nobody wants to go through that misery when the team's out of the playoff picture by Christmas, and you're dragging your ass through the remainder of the schedule. It sucks. Yeah. I get it. I think he's going to be an outstanding defenseman. I just don't know yet because I just haven't seen the volume of games. I don't know. I'm just stuck in an old way of thinking. And I'm fully prepared to admit that maybe I am here. But like, do you have a number for defensemen? Because for me, it's 200.
I think that's a good number, Jeff. And I think you're right in terms of, I don't know what Zeeb's going to be. I don't think a lot of people know what he's going to be because, like you said, he's only played 76 games. And half of that was with a Vancouver team who wasn't very good last season. Yeah. But if you're the Vancouver Canucks front office, you have to make some risks, some calculated risks, some bets on the future because that's what you're building towards. And this could be a turning, like a building block for the future because he's hopefully going to be your number one defenseman for a very long time. And if you, like I said, if you only sign him to that 3-4 year deal, because if he does kind of go on the trajectory that you expect him to go on, when the end of that deal is up and the salary cap is at, let's call it $150 million, he's going to be worth, let's call it $17 to $22 million on the salary cap. And where if you sign him to an 8-year deal, you can probably get him for $10-11 million right now. So when he's playing, towards the end of that, going into his late 20s, he's going to be on a really strong value contract, like you mentioned, a la a Jake Sanderson right now, who's on a really incredible deal. And so if you're Vancouver, you kind of want to make that bet because you want to be in a position to build around him. But yeah, like I think a lot of these GMs don't necessarily know. And I think there are worse guys to make bets on than this player who has a strong draft pedigree. His micro stats are really good. He's good at puck retrievals. He's good at zone exits, zone entries. He's going to get a lot of power play one time next season. So we'll see how that plays out for him. But yeah, it's a tough job to be a general manager. And you look at some of the signings that some of these guys make, and they're signing, mid-30-year-old defensemen to 4-year deals who are not going to age very well and are kind of getting slower when you have this young stud offensive quick defenseman who you give him a longer-term deal and you hope it ages well, but you don't know for certain.
Do you think that, right now, like Landon Dupont, and we're now watching him at the Holinka, like there's another one that's on the horizon. Not that there's going to be, this is going to sound so insulting, but just as we saw so many highly skilled forwards, like there was a glut of these like elite level forwards, and maybe you call this like the Quinn Hughes phenomenon. Not to discount everything that Zeev Boyum has done. Again, I think he's an excellent defenseman. But once upon a time, that was a rare creature. Okay, now it's not so rare.
Nope.
There's more of these guys coming all the time.
The Hudson Boys?
Hudson Boys are another great example. Right? Like there's more of these players every single year in the draft. Maybe a little bit undersized, but man can they ever watch, not that what's Landon Dupont, 6 feet tall? He's not like a 6'4", and he still has
potential to grow,
and he still absolutely. But like with that type of skill from the back end, these guys aren't the rare birds that they once were. Agree, disagree?
No, I totally agree, and I think that's a good thing because I think you're taking the size factor out of it. When the old school way of thinking is you want this big burly defenseman who is going to slam you in your place and take a lot of the puck possession away, and then you didn't have many guys who were small, who were quick, who were fast, but then you're seeing some of these guys really succeed at the NHL level. And you mentioned Quinn Hughes. We mentioned Lane Hudson, who won the Calder Trophy and just is looking like another guy who's on a ridiculously good contract. And, someone like a Cale Makar is almost like a rare breed where he's so fast, but he's also got a bigger frame and can really throw the body around. But to your point, like Landon Dupont right now is around 6 foot tall. Maybe he grows up to 6'2". Maybe he doesn't, though. Maybe he stays around 6 foot. But he seems to be the guy that everyone's talking about that will be the first overall pick in the 2027 NHL draft. And if we look at who's going to be not as good next year, who has potential to get a player like that, I think a lot of teams would be very happy if they kind of built their defensive core around him in the future.
Okay, time for a couple more here quickly. What happens with Makar?
Makar signs before training camp starts. That one feels a little different than Quinn Hughes because he got drafted by the Avalanche. He's been through that system. He won a Stanley Cup with them. He kind of has just
they've prepared. They've been preparing for this extension for a while. When you look at the contracts they've gotten rid of, they've been preparing for this.
So I was talking about this with Dimitri too. Do we think it makes sense for Cale to do like a 4-year deal where he kind of signs for a pretty high AAV, but then has a chance to go back to the market at 31? Or does he take advantage of the CBA where up until September 15th, he can sign for that 8th year and he gets, let's say, $17 or $18 million? It's really what he's more comfortable with, because I could see both deals working for both sides, honestly. But I think Cale's going to sign before training camp. It's just what that term's going to be, and it's probably going to be around that 18 to 19 million AAV because he is the best defenseman in the NHL. You can make arguments for Werenski and Quinn Hughes, but he's right there.
Do you see anybody on the horizon? I mean, we were all wondering about Celebrini, and even he didn't, even though he's getting paid the max for the first few years of this contract. Do we see anyone taking the max?
No, I honestly don't. I think players will come close to the max. I don't think anyone's going to take that max deal. And like we said, like Schaefer's probably the next young player up to potentially take the max deal. But aside from him, like there wasn't really anyone in last year's draft class that I think is going to be a max guy. And then in this year's draft class, the top 2 forwards were wingers, which isn't necessarily a premium position when you're paying top dollar. So I don't see any of those guys taking the max. And, Nikita Kucherov is up, Sidney Crosby's up, but those guys aren't in a position to take max. Kucherov, you could maybe make a little bit of an argument, but Tampa's cap strap, and he's going to take a little less to stay there in Florida where it's advantageous on his tax structure.
I mean, I would just love to see it. I would, part of me, there's a real part of me, we're all sort of in love with the idea of like, oh, all these kids grow up dreaming about this thing. I'm just dying for someone to come out here and say like, look, like you have a job, I have a job too. I'm trying to make the most money that I can, regardless of whether I win the Stanley Cup or not.
And
what the reaction would be.
Yeah. It's honest too, which is like,
it's honest.
But it's something you don't say. It's just something that you can't say, even though if that's how you feel,
Why?
that's how you feel.
Why?
Because that's how we're growing up.
Fans need to believe that everybody's just dreaming about getting the name on. I always make the joke: you want your name on a cup? Go to Starbucks. They're dreaming about getting the name on the cup in the frozen pond in the backyard, and it's all I dream about. I'm just dying for someone to come out here and say like, it's my job. I'm trying to get the most money I can. I got a family too.
People were upset about that Byram deal, right? Speaking of Darren Ferris, where like he got $12.5 million when he's never been a quote unquote number one defenseman. And now he's given the opportunity to do that. And that's exactly what he wanted. And it also becomes not only the role is beneficial for him, but then the money that he's getting is beneficial because he was never getting that in Buffalo. He was never getting that in Colorado. So he found a situation where he can get that. And, kudos to him. You can't get 100%. Mad at him for wanting that.
100%. And again, that goes back to the previous point. Darren Ferris got that.
Yep.
Quibble all you want about Mitch Marner this. He got Mitch Marner his money twice.
Yep. And you can even argue Mitch could have got more than $12 million, but he found his place that he wanted. And I'm not saying he took less than he could have gotten, but now, you feel like Mitch could have got more.
Famously, Mitch Marner was offered but did not sign an offer sheet by the Columbus Blue Jackets a million years ago. Is there an offer sheet coming for another Columbus Blue Jacket player here?
Oh, so my thinking is that if that would have happened, that would have already happened. That's my only thought, is that I think it would have already happened if Fantilli, I know is who you're talking about, would have gotten the offer sheet. It's because I think now, I don't think the value is there when you see what Leo Carlsson signed for. You assume that, and then Macklin Celebrini and Connor Bedard, you assume Fantilli is going to come in right below those guys at around $14 to $15 million. Are there a couple teams that could definitely use him that also have the cap space right now? Absolutely. But then it also creates that situation that Leo Carlsson's now in, where he accepted an offer sheet to go somewhere else, and now he has to answer those questions. And if it's not life-changing money like Leo Carlsson got, I don't see him doing it for if he's going to get a similar amount at Columbus. It would really have to be an overpay, and I don't think a lot of teams are in position to do that right now. You look at the most cap space right now is Detroit, if you go to PuckPedia's website, at $19.5 million. But that would be an interesting place for him if they lose Dylan Larkin and
went to Michigan,
went to the University of Michigan. Yep.
So I
don't have a GM in place though.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, who's signing that offer sheet? They have other things to do. Like, what about Simon Edvinsson?
Right. He's the guy that I think is more likely to actually get offer sheeted, just because he's going to probably fall into that bucket that Brant Clark, Simone Nevich, Pavel Minchikov signed for 5 times 7.2. What if someone gives him 8.5, $9 million? Like, I think that could be an appealing offer sheet for a team, and he's a really good player.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up Minchikov too, because I don't think we've talked about it enough as far as like what that contract did for other defensemen in the NHL. We talk, what did the Leo Carlsson offer sheet mean for all these other forwards? Yet, man, you can maybe make the argument like the one that really stung was the Minchikov deal.
100%. Do you think Anaheim had any thought that they were going to pay that much money?
Not a chance. And they didn't think, of course, like they were going to spend 18 on Carlsson. But I think that. Right. I still think that that's different than what Pavel Minchikov ended up signing for.
Yeah, and Cutter Gauthier is still an RFA. Now, he's not offer sheet eligible there because of the NHL service time, but now what's his contract going to be? There's rumors floating around. He's not going to take less than $15 or $16 million per year on a deal. So the Ducks are in a tough spot with salary cap because they only have $9 million in space right now. So if they're going to sign Gauthier to that kind of a deal, they're going to have to move some bodies out and some cash out before they kind of make that deal. You're allowed to go 10% over the cap in the summer, though.
Okay, last one. Before I let you go, team you are most interested in for the remainder of August. And maybe Detroit is the obvious one because they don't have a manager and there's a sidebar to all of that. And then there's the whole Dylan Larkin saga, and you mentioned Edvinsson as well. That might be the obvious answer here, but I don't know. Maybe there's a sneaky one that we're not paying attention to.
Yeah, I won't go obvious, and I'll go kind of based off an answer you had when you came on our show a month ago, and that'll be the Columbus Blue Jackets for a couple reasons. So one, obviously, that Adam Fantilli, he's a restricted free agent right now. What does he end up signing for? But then you have this whole Kirill Marchenko situation. He's on a ridiculously low $3.85 million AAV contract. He's extension eligible. He has another year left on his deal. Does he want to stay long-term in Columbus, which he expressed a couple years ago? Does that completely flip now, and does he become a valuable trade asset to a team like a Montreal, who's been rumored to potentially be involved in a conversation about that? But then they also have Denton Mateychuk, too, who's extension eligible, who is a really, really nice young defenseman. Yep. I think he's a power play quarterback of the future. And so depending on what happens with Zach Werenski, that's another player who I look could potentially sign long-term in Columbus and what they do there. But you mentioned, too, you still don't think the Dallas Stars deal is off the table for Zach Werenski.
I don't.
So is that something that gets revisited this summer, and does that potentially happen? And then that starts to create some dominoes that fall in Columbus.
I really have a hard. That to me looks like the Werenski side really needed things to calm down fast.
Yep.
Where Dallas was like, nope, we're doing. But the thing is, like, the deal made sense because what's the thing? What's one of the things that Columbus needs more than anything else? A defenseman,
someone to replace Zach Werenski.
A first pairing defenseman who's under contract for a long time.
Right.
Like all of it, even as a 1-for-1. That completely checks out.
Right. And the good thing with restricted free agents, or good thing for teams, is that you're not able to put trade protection on their restricted free agent years. So Thomas Harley still has 3 or 4 years left as a restricted free agent that he is not able to have trade protection. So even though he signed his long-term deal in Dallas, he has no say if they trade him a year or 2 years from now.
Okay. Any last thoughts you want to leave us with? Anything burning in your mind that you want to get off your chest?
No, I think we covered it all, Jeff. Like, I think there's just been a lot of extensions that have already happened. There's going to be more that kind of flesh out throughout the season, and I think training camp is going to be kind of the pseudo deadline for a lot of these to get done. And if you're seeing some guys who aren't signed at training camp, then you're going to start seeing the media talk about it. The rumors are going to happen, but we got about a month. Hopefully, a lot of the front office guys I've talked to are taking their vacations, in the next couple weeks. So I think we might see not too much action happening right now, and then maybe pick up right around U.S. Labor Day.
Needs some momentum for the season. Listen, you spent far more time with me today than you probably bargained for, but buddy, I appreciate it. You be good. We'll catch up soon.
Yep, it's always good to talk, Jeff.
Continue pissing people off on that podcast. Keith Kavanaugh from the PuckPedia Hockey Podcast, who does some outstanding work there. I love it. It seems as if like one of the real niches, and I probably should have mentioned this off the top of the show. We do at Daily Faceoff, we do have a partnership and relationship with the good people at PuckPedia. That's, of course, Keith and Hart Levine, who you've seen on this program and elsewhere. There was a whole lot in there. Let's get to our man who's recently back from San Diego, the one and only Zach Phillips. Oh, there's the hat. Yeah, there's the chapeau. There's turning your back on hockey already. The baseball time. Anything in there, spice your chili? You want to hop on more Mitch Marner talk? Are you going to be that Leafs fan?
Yeah.
Let it go. Leave it alone. Leave it alone.
No.
Oh, okay. You want to do that? All right.
Because I said something about it as well when I saw the clip come out. First of all, I have no issue with Keith asking the question. He should ask the question, and I think he did a great job with it. If I got a chance to interview Darren Ferris, I would also ask him about it. And I'm sure if he came on here, you would ask him things about that time or Mitch or whatever. And rightfully so.
Yeah.
My only beef with it, Jeff, was not necessarily what he said, but just the all-around situation. As a Leafs fan, my beef with it was the lack of awareness that seems to come from that camp at times of why do people dislike us or me or whatever, and then at the same time you hear comments that are like, well, 10 years later we're holding a grudge because Lou Lamoriello didn't give a signing
Schedule
a
A
performance bonus.
Schedule A bonuses, yeah.
Right, Schedule A bonus in my rookie contract. And it's like, well, that's the kind of stuff that pisses people off when you're still holding on to that 10 years later, and yet at the same time they kind of question, why do people dislike me or why do people give me a hard time? That is my beef with it, and that is my beef. Not with Keith or asking the question or anything like that, but that was my frustration. As a Leafs fan, that was where I took issue.
So a couple of things there. One, I think that Darren Ferris is just trying to be honest in that moment about how that family felt. Like, I have a lot of time for Mitch Marner. Like, he's a tremendous. I always enjoy going back to. I used to watch him play with. I'm going to be that guy. Sorry, Don Mills Flyers. Like, guy was insane. He was his number one center for the Don Mills Flyers. Just incredible. This is after the Vaughan Kings, and then with the London Knights on that incredible line with Matthew Tkachuk and Dvorak, like one of the best junior hockey lines I've ever seen in my life. And Mitch was magical out there. And I remember that year that London hosted and all the 205s had checked out and they were too cool for junior hockey and then I'm getting swept in the Memorial Cup. And Marner was like one of the only kids that cared and who gave a shit and was like really good for London. Anyhow, I digress. The one of the criticisms, or maybe not criticism, one of the things that I've always wondered about is this perpetual victimhood around him. And that's why I don't blame him. Now, I know at a certain point, everyone, cut the umbilical cord, grow up, grow a spine, get some hair on your chest and be a man, etc., etc. But it seems as if there's a lot of people in and around that camp that are looking for ways to be offended, looking for ways to be victims. And I've always said, like, Marner won the game. He got to play for his hometown team that he grew up cheering for. He got generational money for the entire Marner family. He almost won the Stanley Cup, and if they would have won the Stanley Cup, Vegas that is, he probably would have won the Conn Smythe Trophy too. It was a couple of games away from that. He's been at the Four Nations and won there, silver medal at the Olympics. And there's more international hockey on the horizon for him. The one thing that's always baffled me is why the victim mentality around the camp. Like, you won the game, you won all of it. I wish I could be as unlucky as the Marners.
No kidding.
Do you wish you would be as unlucky as the Marners?
Yes,
they won.
They won, and that's where I'm with you on this, Jeff. And that was my frustration with it. It's that they are playing victim in this. And again, I can see why Darren answered the question and said what he said, because to your point, from the best of my knowledge, he is being honest. He is answering the question that he was asked as honestly as he could.
Yeah,
I get it. Fair play. Like, understand that, Darren. The frustration is that is the truth, because that is the victim side of things, where it's like, dude, you lived the childhood dream of like millions of kids from maybe even beyond Toronto. You lived to be that kid who was one of the best players on the team in his home city wearing the maple leaf. And then 10 years later, it's like, well, you know, it really pissed us off that we didn't get a Schedule A bonus. So it's like, what?
At the time,
why?
But at the time, true.
No.
At the time, true.
Agreed. But why did that? Like, those are the things where it's like, this pisses people off. And I think that's why people hear it, and especially people from this city and hear it, and it's like, why are you playing victim? Like, we all want to be what you were, and then that happens. So that was my frustration.
Hang on, though. You know what, though? Let me push back and defend a little here. So that is that peek into the mindset of a hockey player. Like, there's the game, and then there's the game. Mm-hmm. There's a reason that Macklin Celebrini took more than the Leo Carlson offer sheet. And there is always amongst the top guys, no, my guy makes the most. No, I make the most. No, I make the most. And part of it is, I think, the responsibility of top dogs to move the needle for other top guys. Like, I get that, and that's part of it. But the game itself, there's the game of hockey on the ice, the game of hockey off the ice, and the game of hockey off the ice is get a little bit more than the next guy. I'll tell you what. Here's one, and it's your team. I'm trying to remember what year it was.
Of course it is.
I remember when the Maple Leafs signed Jason Allison to a $1.5 million contract. And then it was shortly thereafter that Eric Lindros signed with the team for $1.55.
Of course.
And it's just because, like, nope, I slot higher. Like, honestly, that is a peek into, and not just a hockey player. This is all athletes, the professional level. Because I'm sure it's the exact same in baseball, basketball, football. Like, take your pick. I don't think hockey is exclusive to this. There's a whole lot of like, no, I'm better than that guy. I make more than that guy. That's part of it. Oh, how come in Toronto I'm not getting these Schedule A's? How come everybody else in my draft, Dylan Strome's getting Schedule A's? How come Noah Hannafin's getting Schedule A's? Zach Werenski's getting Schedule A's. Everybody around me is getting Schedule A's. How come I'm not getting Schedule A? Jack Eichel in Buffalo's getting Schedule A. How come I'm not getting Schedule A?
Yeah. No.
That's a peek inside the hockey player's brain. That's why I didn't mind it. I don't mind that. And I know it comes across as victimhood, but I won't pin the Schedule A thing on perpetuating this myth that you're victims. That's just hockey players being competitive and at times whiny about not getting what somebody else has.
Sure.
You know? There's one general manager who used to make everybody shave their facial hair.
That is true. Yes. Okay. Yeah.
I never saw Kyle Palmieri look so weird.
Well, that was actually shocking. The first time I saw Kyle Palmieri without facial hair was shocking, yes.
Who's that guy?
Garrett Cole, when he's in the Yankees, goes there and wasn't allowed facial hair, and it was like, what the hell just happened to that guy?
Who's that dude? Anyway, thanks to Keith for stopping by. That was really great. We've been wanting to get Keith on for a while. That podcast is excellent. I love how many times they have agents on. Those are always interesting conversations. And I encourage you, as we encouraged earlier, people to go read Aaron Portzline's latest piece on the future of radio broadcasting in hockey. I encourage you to listen to the PuckPedia Hockey Show with Keith Kavanaugh. Now, in the meantime, welcome. First of all, welcome back from San Diego. And welcome to the next era of Nation Gear. The Nation Network has partnered with Levelwear to bring you a whole new standard of apparel. I got a golf shirt and a hoodie in the office. It looks great. Premium fabrics, elevated fits, and more variety than ever before. Introducing the limited edition off-season social club collection built for the sports between sports. From polos to premium tees to hats and hoodies, these are pieces designed for every part of your lifestyle and not just game day, because being a fan isn't just a season, it's who you are. Head to nationgear.ca, follow Nation Gear on social, and subscribe to our newsletter to be the first to shop new products, limited edition collections, and exclusive drops. This stuff is really excellence. Zach, before we bid everybody good afternoon, good evening, or good morning, depending on where and when they are listening, anything you got burning? Or are you still on vacation mode?
No, I jumped right back into it.
Did you? You don't got like monkey playing banjo between your ears?
No, I did. I think I did a little bit on Friday, and after the show ended, I was like, man, I hope I didn't like derail this show or anything. Because after, I was like, my brain.
It's tough.
I landed the night before. There was a little bit of a time change, and I was like, what the hell did I just do on Jeff's show?
It's like NHLers' first game back after the Olympics, where every game's awful. It's like, did these guys forget how to play hockey? And then after a couple of games, they're like, okay. But man, those games after the Olympics are brutal. But you're back in it.
My mouse didn't feel right. Yeah, I was like trying to type. I was typing slowly and correct on stuff, and I'm looking things up while the show was going. I was like, this is a mess. Today I felt way better. I felt back into it.
I heard you didn't get your Schedule A bonuses for July, too, that Amel didn't give you your Schedule A's.
And I will be holding that over Amel's head 10 years from now when we renegotiate contracts.
We were still doing the show. Remember back in the summer of 26 when Amel wouldn't give you the Schedule A, Zach? I haven't forgotten, Marek. Don't worry. Revenge is a dish best served cold, and I'll have my day. Anything in your brain before I wrap things up?
I mean, I'm just excited for things to get going again here. I was looking at all the schedule stuff coming up and when we get to go back to preseason games. And I know you guys just talked about, Keith brought up the fact that he's heard from some people that maybe some people are going on vacation here now. And I was thinking about the conversations you and I had. I think it was just before I went away where you brought up, timing everything so that you bring some momentum back into the season.
Yeah.
Maybe these GMs and AGMs and all these people, maybe agents go on vacation here now too. Maybe this will work out so we do get some momentum coming back into the season. Maybe we'll get a little bit of noise in a couple weeks from now, and then all of a sudden preseason goes and the NHL picks up where it left off.
Listen, it's there's still a lot to get to, and that's why we're keeping the feeds hot here. A lot of us are, and a lot to get to. And by the way, should mention tomorrow sitting down with Jet Greaves of the Columbus Blue Jackets, recording that tomorrow for our next broadcast on Thursday. Any questions you have for Jet Greaves? Where should people hit us up at Zach?
They should reach out to us, tweet at us at The Sheet Hockey on Twitter. That is the easiest way for you to do so. Make sure to follow us on Instagram as well at The Sheet Hockey there. Send us DMs, reply to our stuff, whatever it is. That's the easiest way. Maybe I'll put up a Q&A on our Instagram poll and tweet one out so that people can send stuff in there.
Great. Awesome.
And we'll make that a little bit of a concise way for people to get their questions in.
Look at you doing the janitorial work. You're back, and you're already the mop and bucket man around here. Good job, Zach. Really appreciate the hard work. Son, put a little something extra in your envelope. All right. On behalf of Zach Phillips, a big thanks to Keith Kavanaugh for stopping by from the PuckPedia Hockey Show. Thanks to you for listening. Thanks to you for watching. Thanks to you for being around and hanging out in the summer when, even though there's no hockey going on, we don't stop talking. Got it? Back Thursday. Jet Greaves, our special guest, as the Sheet returns Thursday at 1 o'clock Eastern. We'll talk to you then.